it's Eileen from Bates Photography, and today I wanted to talk about the rule of thirds. And it's said to be a rule, but it's really just a guideline, and it helps so much to get the composition really strong in camera rather than going back later in post-production and having to crop out a section and then you lose pixels and quality. So let's get started with this tree. And actually I'm going to click out of here a minute. I put this in crop mode so you could see these thin little white lines. And this right here is your rule of thirds. It's a tic-tac-toe board, essentially. So you have your upper and lower horizontal lines, and then you have your vertical lines, bringing it down to 9 sections. So the rule of thirds is basically putting your subjects, key points of interest on any one of these lines, and preferably at the intersecting points of the line. So obviously, very basic with this tree. You have this left vertical line. Boom, it works. It's a simple picture of a tree, but I use the rule of thirds, and I enjoyed this picture actually. So we're going to go on to this covered bridge. Covered bridges are more unusual, and the point of interest is right around the section where your eye goes to look inside the covered bridge. Since it's something that's a little bit more unusual, it works. And if you look also where the horizontal lines are, you look at this whole middle section, and these 3 blocks really are filled with the bridge. So overall, you wouldn't look at this and say this is a rule of thirds picture, but it kind of is, because we can absolutely use this division, especially to frame out this image of this bridge in the center. So let's go on to the next one here. And obviously right at the intersecting point on the lower right hand side is this adorable little sheep here, and so much is going on in the image. I could have cropped this differently, but it was that classic rule of thirds, and it just spoke to me. Now all of these images that you're seeing, I did not crop. So we're dealing with images that were in my camera. Okay, here we go. This little guy, of course, you have this right hand vertical line, and the intersecting point comes right at his face. So that's pretty much obvious rule of thirds. And it's interesting because his short little legs here, if you follow this lower horizontal line, it's just kind of this intersecting point here is looking at these little legs, and so it's cute. This is a cute image, and it's good composition. Okay, so this is absolutely the classic portrait rule of thirds moment, where I actually, and again, completely straight out of camera, got the eye lined up perfectly with the intersecting point of the upper right hand vertical and horizontal line, and it just absolutely works for this image. I've used this image for another video, but I like it. It's an enjoyable image just because of that intersecting eye. Okay, so moving right along. Now here, we have a lot going on here, but the in focus part is this base of this glass. And if you look, the glass follows right on this vertical line, but at the intersecting point, right at the stem of this glass, that's where it's in focus. And all of these out of focus elements, they're interesting because it's like you understand instantly we're dealing with a table, possibly a ritzy restaurant or a wedding or something like that, but your eye goes right to this crystal clear part of the glass, and it happens to be right on that rule of thirds left hand vertical line. Okay, so we're moving on. This was actually the same day, and this was actually a wedding. So here, this is perfect. You have the intersection here where you have the husband's hand holding the bottle of champagne. He's now pouring that for his wife. You have the other intersecting point here which has right where the level of the champagne is. You can actually take this horizontal line and it follows exactly where that champagne is. So you have a lot of elements that really truly work with this image. And we're going on to the next one, which again, this is where our guideline rule of, instead of using the rule of thirds, the guidelines to the thirds, because when you cut this in half, you don't have the intersecting point at her eyes. But she's sitting right, the baby is right at this intersecting lower point on the right-hand side. Now, if you follow the line, of course, it's right here at her face. And this whole section shows all of the elements as you look deeper into the photo, that clearly it's a birthday. I mean, you know that by the cake, but that there's other things. Okay, this is spelling out the word one. And if you also look at the upper horizontal line and lower horizontal line, they perfectly frame her icing filled hands here, and it just works. This image works. So it's rule of thirds basically right here with this line, but it absolutely is rule of thirds when you talk about the framing of the hands, and that's something you don't always think about. Usually you think, most people think anyway, right or left, of your subject, but yeah, if you can put those points of interest right in between those two horizontal lines there, you're going to have a good image. I have another example of that coming up. Okay, so this hawk, perfect example right on that right hand vertical line. But if you follow the upper horizontal, here is the branch, and the lower, here is the branch. The point of interest comes right in at his kind of crazy talons here. So this image, classic rule of thirds. Okay, this was a pregnancy announcement, and you have two things going on. Here, you have the out of focus of the couple kissing, and then here, on this point here, upper left, you have the message saying, look, this is in focus, this is what we're announcing. And these have become so popular on Facebook, and it really is an awesome idea to have the diagonals here. Because when you have 2 points, especially given the rule of thirds, it really is an interesting photo when you nail those 2 points. And again, you want to get it all in camera so you don't have to crop. Okay, this is just one more of the same exact hawk. It's a red-tailed hawk. And here I just moved my camera, and we're still dealing with now the left-hand vertical line, but it still follows the same idea with the lower horizontal line following this branch. And then at this intersection, you still have just the beauty of his feathers and his face, and then this tree here. So though it's completely the other side, this image works equally as well as the last hawk picture. Okay, so this is literally just a lamppost, an old lamppost in a park, but right where it's illuminated and you can see it, the pine needles of the tree lit up, that's the intersecting point, and this follows the line perfectly. And this image, absolutely, from the moment I took it and I looked in the camera, it was pleasing to the eye, and that's what the rule of thirds does for composition. It's absolutely used everywhere. Film, not just photography. I mean, film is photography. So the more that you start practicing this, it's really going to improve your images. Okay, so this is very simple. We have the bride going on the right-hand vertical line here. At the intersecting point, we have her face. This intersecting point, we have the flowers. So it just works. And interestingly enough, again, I'm not right on the eye, but her face here is so pretty where she's kind of got like a little sassy attitude going on. So if you look at this section and this line, clearly she's got her hand on her hip, and it just again, you have the diagonal here that works. All right. Okay, this is such a fun picture because, again, the 2 points here and here. You have here the crazy looking chicken with his shadow here, and it's following this lower horizontal line. With the upper horizontal line, not only does it intersect at this alpaca with this crazy hay on his head, look at how it just continues here with this alpaca, and you see his little smiling face. So this picture, this is classic rule of thirds, and again, the diagonal points, which really is so fun. All right. Now this wedding picture, what I absolutely love about it is, of course, within the hand, you see it's an older couple, and the intersecting point is where their hands, where his hand is on top of hers. And so that works. But again, here we go. We have this intersecting point diagonal here where the flowers are. So here's that diagonal. And then this lower horizontal line has the hands, and this upper line has the flowers and her dress. So it's a beautiful image, and again, no cropping. So it's important to get these images right there in the camera. Okay, so now this is a vertical picture here, and if you look right at this point, there's the sun beaming in. And clearly this is a pregnancy announcement where she's holding the shoes. So the intersecting points are the sun and the sun ray here. But your eye is pulled in because here's these horizontal lines that absolutely frame the little booties here. Now this isn't a classic you wouldn't see originally. Again, it's our guideline because you look and you see the statue is a little bit more in the center. The sun is not on a point, but let's look at where the point is. The point is coming into this angel wing of this old beautiful statue at a landmark in Philadelphia, the cemetery where I took this. And if you look here at the top horizontal line, really this tree just kind of is just this huge canopy over this beautiful old statue. And if you follow that line, it just keeps going just out of frame. And there's really an element of interest there. Now, if you come here to this lower line and you follow it across, it's still, it just, you know that this tree can just kind of go forever. So though this isn't perfect with the rule of thirds, normally with more of the rule of thirds, you would see the statue completely on this vertical line on the left-hand side, it still works. Oh, sorry, trying to bring up the next image. Again, here's another one that doesn't follow the exact rule, and yet it works. Oops, sorry, I gotta show you the whole image here. So you have this duck, and you follow the top horizontal line right onto the eye. Now the intersecting point here is right near his beak, and so you're going to be brought in to his face. But if you follow this vertical line on the right hand side, it goes right down to these cute bright orange feet, and the intersecting point shows the detail in just really this awesome feather pattern here. So this image could absolutely work for rule of thirds. Again, another image where you would say, okay, the horizon line is in the center. Wouldn't it be better to have the horizon either at the bottom horizontal line, the lower, or the top? And that's generally a more pleasing to the eye photo. So why does this picture work for rule of thirds? This intersecting point brings us to the general vicinity of the seagull's tail. And so it brings us into the image looking at the seagull like, okay, where is he going? And if you look at the sand, it's definitely dark and it's wet in this area. If you follow the lower horizontal line, you can see it follows exactly where the cutoff was for this darker area. Now, when you follow the upper line, absolutely looking at this sunrise, it's beaming right at the intersecting point. So the lightest part of the sky is at the intersecting point here, and then you also have this interest of what is this seagull doing. So this is one of my favorite pictures of all time, and it's absolutely an example that the rule of thirds can be a great guideline, but you don't always have to use it if the image works in another way. So the sky was so beautiful that I have more sky showing. And, oh, I'm going to move along here. Sorry, I'm having a difficult time with that. All right, so here we have a perfect example of an intersecting point right here, which brings your interest to the whole thing. Obviously, this is an intersecting point of her eyes, and we're going to be brought to her eyes immediately. But not only the eyes, but this whole knee, and clearly she's climbing, and it makes you want to think like, okay, where is she going? What's she doing? Was she caught? You know, is she a criminal? Like, there's so much that this picture depicts, but the rule of thirds really helps this. Though it's a little bit off from the center, the intersecting, like maybe if I had her slightly over, it works because you're also not only brought in here, but you're brought into the fact that she's really climbing or escaping. Well, we don't know what she's escaping, but all right. Here we go. So another non-typical rule of thirds, but look at this top horizontal line. It follows the curve of the fence the whole time, and it absolutely works. Now, if you come over here to this vertical line, you have this tree in the background. Also, it's splitting the in focus area of the fence. So your eye is brought to this fence, not only to the woodwork, but you're kind of looking at this tree here behind it. This image is one of my favorite fall images that I took this year. Okay, so this was so fun because if you look at the upper horizontal line, the lower horizontal line, it frames what this picture is speaking to, which is her eyes. And you have this intersecting point, which brings us generally to the vicinity of the eye. It might have been a little more ideal if the eye was higher, but when you look at the image, you follow the left vertical line. It's right on her hair. We see that this is a very light veil. I love this image. So again, guideline is what you want to keep in mind. It doesn't have to follow the rule, but as you are doing a close-up, just take another second or two to really think about that rule of thirds and that composition. You're going to be happy you did. Okay, so we have one more image, and here, this is very simple, another portrait, and you have the right vertical line, you have the intersecting point at her face, but really look at this hand here. This hand shows what? That she is cold. It was clearly a windy day, her hair is blowing. She has a nice expression, but oh, it's kind of like, oh, you can feel that she's shivering. And that intersecting point was perfectly placed to depict what's going on in this story. And that's what photography is. So thanks so much, guys, and I hope that this helps for you in your work, that you can start thinking about these rules of thirds or guidelines to the rules of thirds, so that you can improve the composition right on the spot when you're working with a client. And it just saves you later for cropping. Eventually you will memorize, you'll see the grid in your head, because it's definitely something now that I don't need the lines in my camera to help with. I can really just put a tic-tac-toe board over what I'm looking at, and then I can move the camera a little right, left, or up and down, whatever works best. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to our channel if you did, and if you have any questions or comments, I'm here to help. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.